Welcome to FNF Victory Road Team Analysis. In this series, I will be analyzing some of the teams, well, all of the teams, that have participated in the FNF Victory Road Draft League. This video is going to be particularly special because it is going to be analyzing Dutch Inkays, and this is actually, for those of you who didn't know, Questrequested's team. He is the one who is behind this league, so I really want to give a big shout out and thanks to Quest for organizing this league and putting it together. He is a really cool guy, and when the previous league ended abruptly and a lot of people were kind of sad about that, he stepped up and he was like, you know what, I'm going to try and organize the league and make it as good as possible, and he really delivered on that. And I joined that effort with him. We were both kind of co-runners of the league, and it was a pleasure doing this with him. And I'm always happy to work with Quest. He's a really great person to work with. So this is just my little shout out for Quest for, you know, everything that he's done for the league and for the server in general. So big shout out to Quest. So this is Dutch Inkays, Quest's team, our resident European in the league, and I just wanted to go over some of the initial Pokemon that he had, and I did get to ask him his thoughts on that. So his initial team, what he said about his initial team was that he wanted to mainly make a balanced team with a lot of utilities. And he has gotten this reputation as the pivot guy. A lot of people think of him as liking Volt Switch and U-Turn, and that is a big part of his playstyle, but he said it was a lot about utility. And that could come in the form of pivots, but also Stealth Rock, clearing entry hazards like Rapid Spin and Defog, having a Ghost type in order to spin block, moves like Trick or Switcheroo, and having Volt Switch blockers that are ground type or have Volt Absorb, and having cores like a Fire, Water, Grass core and Dragon, Fairy, Steel core. So for those of you who entered the league, Quest actually put together a very nice little guide on team building, and he kind of checked all the points in his guide. It was like a bunch of those things like entry hazards, setters, entry hazard removers, pivots, certain cores, certain types, and things like that. So he definitely followed his guide to a T. To him, variety was really important. He didn't want to just have one gimmick in his team, and he wanted his team to be a little bit more balanced. So instead of going very hyper offensive or very stally, he decided to go in the middle and go for a balanced team, and I think that was a good choice for him. He had strong offensive options like Hydreigon and Azumarill. He had stalling options like Amoonguss and Kecleon. He had a pivot like Jolteon, a sweeper, Durant, stealth rockers like Rhydon and Mega Steelix, and Kecleon later. Kecleon comes later, but still. And even a trapper in the form of Azumarill with Whirlpool. So he was going for a balance that made it hard to plan against him because he could really do a lot with his flexibility. In terms of strategies or cores that he wanted to do, he had a lot of different things, so nothing really stood out to him in particular, but the one thing that he said he really wanted to use was Belly Drum Azumarill. So he definitely was able to do that in a couple of battles, set up the Belly Drum and go for that Azumarill sweep, which was really interesting to see. And overall, I think he had a really strong draft. There wasn't really a Pokemon that I thought was not good on his team. I was a little bit skeptical of Baynet. I was like, Baynet is but it was his tier 5. He had really good Pokemon otherwise. And Hydreigon and Azumarill both having the Z moves was really wise. Hydreigon being a strong special threat, Azumarill being a strong physical threat, and both of them having adequate coverage to deal with things. And on top of that, being able to run defensive sets too if they want to. So overall, I think Quest had a really strong draft, and he knew exactly what he was doing when he drafted. He also told me that he doesn't like to plan things out too much beforehand. He likes to kind of go with the flow when he drafts, seeing probably what other people take and what's available for him to use, and then building up on that core and team that has a lot of variety and utility. And I think that's a really smart move for him that worked out well. It's kind of like the opposite of what I like to do. I'm a very heavy planner, but it shows that both, since we both made it super far, it shows that both approaches can be utilized successfully and can work really well. So I think Quest did a really good job in his draft, and I'm excited to see how he drafts next league. I was actually interested in the fact that he drafted completely different Pokemon this time, pretty much from last time around. So I think he's going to follow that trend next time, so it'll be interesting to see. But moving away from the initial team, let's look at his battle record. And overall, his battle record is really good. He only lost twice, and those 2 losses were to the first place and third place overall in the league, respectively. So he did a really good job. He started out really strong, and he actually ended up with a 5-week win streak. So that was really good. A total of 8-2 with a plus 19 differential. So getting that tie for second place in the regular season and then getting second place in the playoffs, really, really solid performance by Quest. I think he did a really excellent job. So his first match was versus Rio Grande Rapidash. And this match, he actually had a few thoughts on this match. He said that he wanted to use Z Belly Drum Azumarill, and he wanted to take Latios to low enough HP to be able to do that, and he definitely did that effectively. Azumarill was able to Belly Drum, and it was a close match, but he definitely did bring a lot of the chops, and Azumarill providing a lot of pressure, as well as Victini with that offensive pressure. So this was a good start for Quest at the beginning of the league. Next we move into Mystical Chain. This was my battle, the one that I faced him in. And this one, I was actually surprised he didn't bring Victini, because I think Victini does have a good matchup against me. This one was one of his less good performances. He was able to take down Druddigon with Crobat, but something that was really tough for him to break through was Milotic and Serena, both acting together, also Volcarona to an extent, as a very strong core, especially Serena having the Queenly Majesty ability, which makes Aqua Jet useless, and being able to take down Azumarill. So I think that was the tough part of this match, but Quest is definitely going to be able to face my team again later, and we'll see how that set goes. Next was Canopy Defenders, and in this match, Quest did a really good job holding his own. The KOs were pretty much spread throughout all the Pokemon, but he was able to use Jolteon very effectively. Jolteon, this is kind of like the start of him and Jolteon being a very reliable and effective pivot for him. Especially once the ground types on the other team go down, Jolteon is able to really run around with that Volt Switch and just set up a bunch of advantageous situations for Quest. So I think that was really effective for him overall. We have Elemental Dragons next, and in this battle, Quest actually gave his thoughts about this. He said that Durant was his key because Elemental Dragons had a lot of weaknesses, and we do see that 3 of Elemental Dragons Pokemon are weak to Steel, which Durant has Stab, Iron Head. On top of that, Mega Beedrill can fall to Stone Edge. So Durant was able to sweep and go for some really strong offensive momentum. Durant really is a menace once it gets that Home Claws up and doesn't miss due to Hustle. So Quest did a really good job in making sure to have that have the conditions met for Durant to be able to set up and then go for a sweep. After this battle, Quest traded Porygon 2 for Kecleon. And actually in the last battle, something I forgot to mention was that Porygon 2 was extremely effective because of Trace. So versus Kingfuse, Porygon 2 was actually able to trace Vaporeon's Water Absorb to Wall Vaporeon, and additionally it was able to trace Nidoqueen's Sheer Force. And Trace actually is useful versus Clefable and ignoring those Calm Mind boosts. So 3 of Kingfuse's Pokemon were able to be countered by Porygon 2, and it was very flexible in that regard. A wall that was very hard to take down, so Porygon 2 did an incredible job there. But coming up after that, we have Banette being switched for Kecleon. So this is 2 normal type Pokemon on Quest team. I believe that Quest wanted to go for Kecleon because of the fact that it could go for utility and also go kind of for a little bit of offense, a little bit of defense, depending on where you throw the EVs and what kind of set you give Kecleon. So that is something that Quest likes. It gets both Stealth Rock and it gets Trick. Those are both things that Quest like to use, so I think this was a good choice for him, especially considering Banette. I like Banette as a Pokemon, but to be honest, it wasn't really doing Quest much favors. He only used Banette once, so it really didn't work, I think, with his team as much as he wanted to. So that's why he had traded Banette for Kecleon. And Quest actually said that Banette didn't fit his team well, and he didn't really see anybody that he wanted to use it against except me. And once he faced me, then he was like, well, there's no point really to keep Banette, so that's why he dropped it. Next we have the battle versus Appleton Allegiance, and this is Quest's second loss and his only other loss in the regular season. In this one, he didn't build a bad team, but I think one thing that he definitely didn't expect was Audino, and also Rotom Wash was a really strong matchup in this case. Both were exchanges made by Colin previously, and Audino had safety goggles on, so it was a highly specific counter to Amoonguss. Dragalge also had substitute, so Amoonguss was really Quest's dead weight, I think, in this matchup, because there were so many Pokemon that could set up on Amoonguss for free and switch in without any fear. That being Audino, Talonflame, and to an extent Rotom Wash. Sorry, I meant Dragalge, not Talonflame. So being able to take down Audino or simply wall it was really good for Colin, and Colin ended up running away with this one as a result. After that, Quest decided to trade Porygon 2 for Dhelmise, which was interesting because Porygon 2 performed so well in previous match, but it made sense because Quest had another normal type in Porygon 2, in Kecleon. And he said that after he dropped Banette, he wanted to get a ghost type back, and Dhelmise fit it the best as it had offensive grass to counter Colin, and so that's mainly why he got Dhelmise. And I think it was a really good choice. If he was going to face Colin again in the playoffs, Dhelmise was a really strong Pokemon against him, especially considering it was also strong versus other people too. It was strong versus me, for example. So it was a good choice. Dhelmise also plays into Quest's playstyle because while I was researching it when I was about to face it, I noticed it got knockoff, it got rapid spin, and it got switcheroo. So a lot of utility that Dhelmise has. It also has favorable bulk, and it can hit extremely hard. So Dhelmise was a very, very good option for Quest, I think, and after this, Quest didn't lose another regular season battle, so it goes to show how Quest really optimized his team, I believe. Next is versus Grand Island Jolteons. This was a good win for Quest. For this battle in particular, I know Quest was really packing a lot of U-turn and Volt Switch to deal with Wobbuffet just in case it went for the Shadow Tag. So that was really smart by him. He also had an extremely fast team with all of his Pokemon aside from Delmise being very fast. So he was able to get that speed edge, and by pivoting and attacking with the very fast Pokemon that he had, he was able to clinch this one. The only Pokemon I think he really struggled with a lot was Thunderous Therian, but he did a pretty good job in this match with his team and how he constructed it. Next is versus Butcher Blissies, and this was a fun match because Quest actually named all his Pokemon after the... well, I'm not going to give spoilers to anybody who hasn't watched Yu-Gi-Oh, but to a specific group of people from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. And so that was fun, considering that Fingered Witch on Butcher Blissies really likes Yu-Gi-Oh! So that was a cool naming convention that Fingered Witch actually caught on to as well. Azumarill was really intense in this match, being able to take down a lot of Fingered Witch's Pokemon. There was one moment in the match where Durant was setting up on Blissey and decided to go for an offensive hit, but Blissey survived and went with counter. But after that, I think Quest was able to predict a lot of moves and make appropriate switches and really take down the opposing team. So this was another pretty clean victory for Quest. Next is versus Detroit Dunsparces, and in this battle Victini was really Quest's star, which is interesting because it was versus Rain, but Quest was able to use Victini effectively, especially with Bolt Strike. Bolt Strike being the move that took down Pelipper in one shot. Once Pelipper went down, that was the final Rain that Startoad could rely on, so that was very important for Quest. And then Jolteon also using Hidden Power Grass on Mega Swampert was a pivotal moment in this match because he was able to take out the most threatening Pokemon on the other team in one shot with Hidden Power Grass. So those were two really game-changing moments in the match, and then Victini was able to clean up at the end. So really strong performance by Quest in handling a very tough team. For week 9, I believe. Was it 9? Yes, that was 9. Dutch Inkays versus Wooper Blooper. Quest went against Wooper Blooper and was able to get the 6-0. One of the biggest things that Quest utilized in this match was Amoonguss, and the fact that it could come on any of Wooper Blooper's Pokemon aside from Chandelure very safely and wall those Pokemon. Additionally, rocks were up on Wooper Blooper's side of the field, I believe, and that prevented Wooper Blooper from switching Pokemon very easily, especially Chandelure. So while Quest was able to switch in and out a lot, Lion Hugs was not, and that ultimately I think was a part of the reason why Quest had such a large differential win in this battle and played it really well. And then finally, versus Bayside Divers, Quest got a narrow 1-point win. This one was actually going pretty favorable in Quest's, going pretty favorable for Quest, but Luxray was able to do a lot of damage, and Quest set up a Trick Room with Kecleon. I think he was trying out Trick Room before the playoffs just to see another tool in his toolkit, but Luxray was actually slower than most of his Pokemon and was able to really handle that well and narrow the score. Lapras almost took down Durant at the end and would have been able to maybe even take down Victini, but Durant survived, took out Lapras, and Victini was able to pull through entirely at the end. So really close match, but Quest did win it, and due to that win, Quest went in with an 8-2 score. Overall, his differentials were really good. He had one of the highest, well, no, he had the highest kill death ratio for a Pokemon that did not die. So his Victini actually ended up getting 4th place with no deaths in a tie for 4th place. Well, 3rd and 4th place actually with Megalopony. So very impressive by him. But other Pokemon with impressive differentials too. We have Azumarill and Jolteon, both with a +4, and they were used 90% of the time, so that meant a lot of the time they were very useful. Durant also up there. And some of the weaker Pokemon, we have Mega Steelix and Hitmonlee, and Dhelmise actually. Mega Steelix makes sense because it's more there to tank hits rather than to kill things and set up Stealth Rocks. Hitmonlee, pretty frail, so if you can't set up, it's tough. And then Dhelmise, I think, is kind of like in the Steelix situation where it can take hits. But Quest did use all of his Pokemon at least once, including the ones he traded away. He did have a very high usage rate for Azumarill and Jolteon, only not bringing them to 1 match each. So Quest did use a lot of his team, and he liked to vary things up so that he always kept his opponents wondering. So yeah, very interesting. And I forgot to mention in the match versus Lion Hugs, actually, sorry, I was looking at my notes, that taking down Chandelure was important. I think I mentioned that, and he got a lucky crit, so that's something that he also wanted to mention. But in terms of his favorite Pokemon to use, it was Azumarill, and he said there was a slight nod to Jolteon, and I think that's pretty evident in the fact that both of their usage is very high, and that Azumarill really fits him. It's a Pokemon with all-around stats, a lot of different ways to use it, a lot of different moves, and it keeps the opponent guessing. Sometimes you might think, oh, it's an offensive Azumarill, I'll have to take it down right away. Use the strong grass move, figure out that it's Sap Sipper, it traps you with Whirlpool, and then before you know it, you're dead to Perish Song. So it's very versatile, and you really have to be careful when you're facing it. Jolteon also embodies, I feel, Quest and his playstyle really nicely, being able to pivot in and out, but also being able to hit very hard. I mean, even those Shadow Balls without stab hit very hard, Hyper Voice sometimes, so Jolteon was really good for him. In terms of least favorite, he said that Bayonet was his least favorite, and it makes sense because he only used it once, it didn't really do much for him, and he traded away after. So I think that definitely makes sense for Quest and his usage. So those are the Pokemon that Quest used. I think a really solid team overall, and he was really well poised going into the playoffs. He did have to go to the quarterfinals, even though he was tied for 2nd place in the regular season. Because Colin had beat him in the regular season, he was technically ranked 3 in the playoffs, and therefore had to play in the quarterfinals. So he played against Wooper Blooper, which was a favorable opponent to him because he actually 6-0'd Wooper Blooper in the regular season. So this was an opponent he already faced and felt comfortable against. And this shows in the first match where he actually won 6-0. Hydreigon was a big problem for Wooper Blooper's team, being able to punch holes in pretty much everything except Sylveon. And Amoonguss was also able to come in and wall things when needed. And I think Wooper Blooper's big takeaway after that actually was, how do I take down Amoonguss? So Dutch Inkays played this one really well. In the second match, it was different because Wooper Blooper actually Lion Hugs prepared for Amoonguss and packed a lot of paralysis too, which was a secret weapon versus Dutch Inkays. Ended up winning 4 to Dutch Inkays, having -4. This time around, he brought Azumarill with Perish Song, and that did pretty well, and his Azumarill Amoonguss Hydreigon core was extremely hard to crack, but it was also extremely hard to deal damage because it was a lot more defensive than offensive. So I think that's where he was having trouble, because he lost all his offensive Pokemon. But in the second match, Quest did manage to turn it around and win the set. And this time he did go a little bit more offensive, opting to include Durant instead of Jolteon. And Durant did go for that setup right off the bat, took out some key threats, was taken out itself, but Rhydon later came in and was able to do pretty well against Wooper Blooper. So this is a good set. He won 2-1 with some decent wins, especially the first one. And then he moved to the semifinals to face Colin, who is someone who he faced before and lost to, actually, in a 6-0. So this was a chance for Quest to redeem himself, and redeem himself he did. He danced around Colin's team and made some really good predictions, especially with Dhelmise and Amoonguss, I'd say. Hydreigon was able to Draco Meteor Dragalge right off the bat. That was a really interesting opening, because I thought that Colin was going to switch out. But yeah, Draco Meteor took it out in one shot. But the true star of the show, I'd say, was Hitmonlee, who at the end was able to set up a bulk up, essentially, a curse, which was undone by the White Herb. So it was like a free bulk up and speed doubling. And then Hitmonlee swept the remaining Pokemon with close combat, taking down Megalopony. So that was a really good performance by Quest. And then in the next match, Quest opted to take out Amoonguss for Crobat to speed up the pace of that battle. And Appleton Allegiance, Colin also made a couple switches as well, Ninetales, Lola, and Talonflame this time appearing. And Crobat did really well for him, especially with the fact that it was choiced, so it was able to outspeed Megalopony, and I think that really was the game determiner for Quest. Taking down Megalopony is extremely useful for Quest, and once it's down, it's a lot easier to go through the team. And so Quest had a very solid victory in this match, winning +3, +4 in the set with a score of 2-0. Very good victory for him in the semifinals, and he moved on to grand finals. In the grand finals, he faced Mystical Chain, which happens to be me. And he actually had some thoughts. Versus Lion Hugs and Colin. I have my notes printed out instead of on the computer, so that's why. So versus Lion Hugs, he did want to say that he was able to take Sylveon down in Game 2 and had a small sense of hope, but then Mega Gyarados was able to plow through him, and it got a crit, I think he said. Game 3 worked out because of Durant. It was pretty close, but Durant really gave him the edge. And he also had that same approach of trying to take down Chandelure first in Game 1. Okay, versus Colin, Dhelmise was really important in both of them. The second match, he switched out Amoonguss for Crobat for momentum and to take down Lopunny, like I had mentioned earlier. And then finally, versus me, he said that Game 1 was pretty bad overall. He expected a totally different team coming from me. He didn't expect 5 out of 6 of the Pokemon I brought, and so it threw him off guard. So that was really tough for him. I think that Druddigon especially was really tough. He had Crunch on Hydreigon, so I think that he went mixed or physical completely. He didn't change the move Crunch versus Druddigon, so I think maybe he might have been Choice Scarfed, but that really hurt him, and Druddigon was able to take hits and also use Rocky Helmet Rough Skin, and also then dish out some pretty strong hits as well. So I think that was tough for him, and then he made quite a few changes. He used Victini and Amoonguss, which I don't think he used last time. Yeah, he didn't use them last time. And then I had completely switched up my team too. For Game 2, it went a lot better, and I think that He could have won if he went Power Whip on the Piloswine or Final Gambit on Druddigon with Victini. That's what he said. So yeah, it was really close, only by a +1, -2. So definitely a lot closer than the last game. Different set of Pokemon, so this is probably more in line with what he expected. I know that Quest expected Piloswine and Volcarona. But again, Druddigon did extremely well, and Piloswine also did well in this one. So overall, Quest did end up losing this set in Grand Finals, but he ended up extremely strong in the league, getting second place. Very coveted position, and I think that he did an extremely good job. So I'm really proud of him, and seeing how far he's come and how versatile he's been able to play. I think he has some really good prediction games, and definitely a lot of different utility in the Pokemon he uses, like he said earlier. In terms of his most difficult challenge in the league, Quest said that it was versus my team and also versus Colin, but he said that after he got Colin's team down, it didn't go too bad. Quasimodo was also one that Quest said he was nervous against, so those were the three that he was most nervous against, or that he found most difficult. He wasn't really sure what his favorite moment in the league was, and he said that his approach to Pokemon, he never really played competitive except for a few friendlies before the preseason, so it was new to him, but he watched a lot of competitive Draft League from A-Drive, which is a Pokemon YouTuber, and he said that he really liked this format for the Draft League. The previous one we used Smogon tiers instead of the points system, and the tiering specifically made for the draft, and I think he preferred this point system and specific draft tiering just because it shows a more accurate picture of the draft environment instead of the overall usage-based environment. So that was Quest's thoughts. And once again, I just want to say thank you so much, Quest, for not only organizing this, but participating and making it so far. You did such a good job. Very proud of you, and I'm excited for you to be able to join the next league. I know that Quest had already told me this is not news. This is news to other people since they probably haven't heard. Sorry, sneezed. But Quest actually won't be able to head the next one. He will be participating, but he won't be able to head it just because he's pretty busy. He has an internship going on right now and a lot of things going on in his life. But I'm really happy he's going to be able to participate. And I'll be leading this next one with Noob Scrub. So it's going to be a fun time. And I think he might change from Dutch Inkays to something else. I think he mentioned that. And he's also going to have a different team because he said he doesn't like to run the same team twice. So I'm really curious to see what he brings. And I think we'll definitely be seeing him in playoffs again. A strong performance because he is a really, really good trainer. So that's Dutch Inkays, Quest's requested team. And thank you so much for watching and for tuning in for these team analysis videos. And thank you, Quest, once again for sending me your responses to some of the questions I had asked you earlier for this video. This is the last team analysis video before mine, which will be coming soon. Mine will be a little bit different. I'm going to go a lot more in depth, so I'm going to be spilling all the secrets and the sets that I used, and also the strategies I approached my matches with. So stay tuned for that. And thank you, everybody, once again for your interest in the league and for participating. And yeah, so I'll see you in my last team analysis video coming up, which is my very own team analysis, the team analysis of Mystical Chain. See you then.